sort of revise to come to the context before we go to the Tat Padartha Prakarana. We are doing the Tvam Padartha in the chapter 1st to the 6th. And we had a long discussion because chapter 2nd is quite a long one. And we had a lot of discussion regarding what it means to do right karma and what is right karma, how to do it, and what is it that is preventing you from doing it. And there was a lot of discussion about what is Sankhya and what is yoga, and a bit of understanding about what is this Atma, what is the truth, and why we get confused, and what is the need for doing karma. So a lot of discussion was there, and we had a few follow-up discussion in the group. Regarding, for example, if somebody who is doing it without any desire, whether all kinds of karma can be accepted as good action. Is it karma yoga, like a judge, jury, criminal, an executioner? All of you can sort of claim that we are all doing our karmas. But if you look at the second chapter, there are certain definitions, certain precursors are kind of mentioned as to what qualifies as swadharma, because you have a word called dharma. So obviously the sociological background comes into picture, the moral universe in which you are operating, which defines what is right action and wrong action, comes into picture. Among those people who are doing any kinds of action, the nishkama karma or karma yoga as a definition is applicable to only right actions, which are anyway good actions, which are not pratisiddha karma. They are permitted karmas. Among permitted karmas, if you do it with desire, that becomes kamya karmas. And therefore, that doesn't help you purify your constitution of the mind and the body. Therefore, you want to cleanse your consciousness, then you have to do your duty without any attachment. Somebody might say, why the hell should I at all do anything? If I cannot at all enjoy the benefits thereof, I have to surrender my results, the rewards of my karma. Why should I waste my time? Why shouldn't I go to the forest and study? That question will come. They're saying that, and this will come now in this chapter 3, that there are two levels in which we are understanding it. Without a pure mind, it's very difficult to grasp the secret of our existence from a Vedantic standpoint. It's a very good way to discuss it, because you have to keep in mind that we had Buddhism, which was prevalent in different corners of the country. It is quite possible that there was a lot of social anarchy in a way, where young boys were abandoning their parents and societies and all becoming monks. And there is going to social system is going to fall. The division of labor cannot sustain itself. No one will work. How does the society sustain itself? And therefore, keeping all that in mind, and also you have to keep in mind that a lazy person who is running away from what is essentially his duty, what is supposed to the minimum, because you are grown up with the benefit that has been given to us by our parents, by our teachers, and you just walk away. If you have that sort of vairagya, that is fine. But otherwise, if you're just a lazy guy, you're going away, you're not going to benefit at all. And towards the end of it, Bhagavan mentions about what are the lakshanas, that is, what are the symptoms of a person who has attained equanimity. And these sort of symptoms, or the definitional description of a person who has attained that equal vision, is given to set a certain standard for other aspirants who are trying to ascend on the scale of consciousness from materialistic and a human level of consciousness towards a more refined, sharpened, superhuman, if you want to use this word, but that's too arrogant, I would say, to a more spiritually inclined, inclusive state of understanding or consciousness, where he is all the time established in the truth without coming into conflict with society and continuing to serve the society as a means to attain that higher level of consciousness. And that sort of is elaborated in chapter 3. Now, how does he set the tone for the chapter 3? Bhagavan sets the tone for the chapter 3 with making Arjuna pose a few questions to him, because Bhagavan in the previous chapter has already hinted that Arjuna, you have to understand that there are a lot of, he mentions that sloka, which is very powerful in sloka number 46. Yavan artham udapane sarvata sampludodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. All the karma kandas and rituals you're doing, just imagine if you're a well, you're digging and pulling, lifting water out of it. Just imagine if the whole place, whole township where you're living, gets submerged in water. What kind of water are you looking for? It's water everywhere. So when you're right inside an ocean, it's like if it's all covered with water, then you don't distinguish. I mean, this whole purpose of taking water, taking a dip in the swimming pool or lifting water from the well, these are irrelevant questions because you're already submerged. I mean, it's water everywhere. Now, the person who knows the self, that feeling is like that. There is nothing more to be achieved. Having said that, again, he's trying to say that you should do your swadharma because if you run away, you're not going to get anything. It's very important for you to do it. So Arjuna gets a little confused. And any student of Vedanta will ask this question, that if Atma Jnana is the goal of Vedanta, why are you emphasizing karma? Anybody can ask this question. So he has to put karma into a proper context without washing his hands off the responsibility to explain that all people cannot sit and do Vedanta study or meditation. It's not meant for everyone, neither it's desirable for society, nor for the whole cycle of creation. That's what Bhagavan deals with in the chapter 3, which is focusing purely on karma yoga. So Arjuna is first asking him, Yayasi chet karmanaste mada buddhir janardana tatkim karmani ghore mang niyojayasi keshava. Why are you pushing me into this whole ocean of karmic bondage when you know that what is superior is jnana yoga? This nishtha of having to meditate on the self and purifying the consciousness. Why should I go do a job or fight the army and etc.? And he's saying, are you trying to cheat me in the next sloka? Then Bhagavan sort of clarifies his doubts in a very straightforward way, but in different phases. Okay, so he starts with saying that Arjuna know for sure that there are two major paths to self-realization. One is, so he says, Lokeshmin Dvidha Nishta Pura Prokta Maya Nagha. Maya, by me, Anagha. Please understand that I have said this. Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. So you can see that he sort of established some sort of a co-relationship between two levels of spiritual practice, which has something to do with adhikara. Who is the guy who deserves to do it? The adhikari is one is Sankhyanam. The guys who are committed to the jnana, the sannyasis. The other ones are the yoginam, the ones who are doing karma yoga. So either he will do karma yoga, those who are yogis, that means that doers of karma, the doers, and then the analyzers and the meditators and the thinkers, the self, not self-seekers in the materialistic sense, but those who are searching inwardly for an understanding of existence. They are the Sankhyana, the Sankhyas. And he very clarifies very clearly that, however, you don't have a choice to make between Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. That is not for you to make. That's not possible. You have to understand, it's very important for you to understand that it's not between jnana and a karma. In fact, karma is a necessary precondition for cleansing of the consciousness, for ascending to a higher plane where you can do jnana yoga. So you don't have the vikalpa or an alternative to choose from. That's number one. Therefore, he mentions that You can never succeed in getting sannyasa if you have never done karma. And second, he mentions only by running away, only by sannyasa, you can never enjoy the benefits of jnana yoga. Sannyasa is a trigger, is a immediate condition for doing jnana sadhana. Understandable. However, you shall not succeed only by running away. So you must have purified yourself before you do it, and he mentions that in this sloka number 4. And then he again mentions that there is no one who can exist without doing any karma. That creates a lot of confusion in the minds of lay readers of Bhagavad Gita. So he's saying no one, because even if you go and sit as a sannyasi without doing any karma, your mind will start working. Because why? Because these are gunas. There are qualities, the prakriti, the three gunas, rajas, sattva, and tamas. They're active. They'll make you move in different directions. So by just tightly sitting at a particular place, you cannot, start your journey on the path of self-knowledge, not easy. And then he's saying, therefore, karmindriyani sanyama ya aste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharah sauchyate. In order to clarify this point, that without karma you cannot take sannyasa, only sannyasa, no jnana yoga. He says a person who dissociates his senses from the objects of his senses. Could be a golden necklace or a job or wife or children or husband. He runs away to a hostel or retreat and sits there quietly. He'll become a mithyachara. Why? He's a mithyachara because Indriya Arthan Vimudata Mithyachara Sauchita. Why? Because he's already having a sankalpa, and that sloka will come later on. He's doing anyway a certain sankalpa. That, in seeing karma in akarma and akarma in karma, we have that also is there. That's one of the most powerful slokas of Bhagavad Gita. What he's saying is that he just has physically tightened his senses, but there is no vairagya. There is no genuine interest in the higher secrets of life. And therefore, he's a Vimuratma. He's living in self-delusion. Therefore, he's a Mithyachara. That's a warning for a guy who's trying to run away without having done the course of Nishkama Karma. Then he praises the guy who stays back to do his Nishkama Karma. He's saying, just Indriyani Manasa, Niyamya Arjuna, Karmendriya Karma Yogam Asaktaha Sa Vishishyate. He's a Vishishta Purusha. He's a special one. Why? He is already doing some Poroksha Jnana Sadhana by reading certain texts. And he is trying to control his mind. He's doing everything. He's not trying to get trapped in anything. So you see, and later on he will use this word Nitya Sannyasi. It will also come. You will read it in the succeeding sections. So he sort of glorifies this life of involvement without entrapment. It's like engagement without getting involved or trapped in it. It's very critical, very difficult to practice. This is a very difficult art. And therefore, he says, then he mentions Karma Yoga, starting with the sloka number 8, Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam Karma Yayo Vyakarmanaha. Karma is superior to akarma, that is dry, uninformed, uneducated act of sannyasa. Sarira yatra pichate na prasiddheta karmanaha. So, if you run away, even you cannot sustain yourself. Just sustenance of your body, biological sustenance, also is going to be a challenge. Who's going to give you food? You're a king, you're a prince. You don't want to do anything, you want to run away. That is very stupid. So he alerting him. Okay, so then you will find in the consequent slokas, the idea of karma is now reinterpreted not as physical action, but as conscious participation in a course of physical activity with certain goals in mind, and that particular goal in mind includes also an element of sacrifice. Please understand this. You're running around. That is not karma. Yeah, in physics, of course, that is work. Wherever there is force and there is displacement, F into S is W. That's what we have studied in school, right? So you just need application of some force and some displacement. Work is done. So if you're wearing a, you're carrying a heavy stuff, you're standing at a place, no work. Why? Even though you are, exerting a lot of energy to carry it, no work because there's no displacement. These are the, very rigid definitions of what's work. However, here we are not talking about that as work. What we are talking about as karma is a certain course of physical or mental activity with a certain goal, and that goal necessarily includes an idea of sacrifice. So here, work is elevated to a new definition as yajna or sacrifice. And therefore, he says, Yagyarthat karmononyatra lokayam karma bandhana tadartham karma onteya mukta sangaha samachara. So therefore, he's saying, what creates bondage is that physical activity, mental or physical exertion, which is undertaken without having in mind that particular idea of yajna. This is a sacrifice, this is an offering. So work here is elevated to kind of a prayer. So the work, which was so far having a secular definition, a materialistic definition, is now given a spiritual color, a spiritual explanation. Work in itself, not necessarily only physical, but it has a spiritual aspect. So if you do it consciously and you are able to then, what do you call it? You commit that sacrifice. You're observing that rite of sacrifice. And that sacrifice, whenever you sacrifice something, whenever you invest something, you get some return. So every sacrifice also brings certain returns, certain benefits. Now, because he will say sangam tyaktva mukta sangaha, so without having desire for results, then what will you get as benefit? What you get as benefit is that purification of the consciousness. So this is the next level of twist in the understanding that karma, instead of being a secular physical act, is elevated to being a spiritual action, which has great significance for the way our consciousness is going to evolve. That is very important. So a lot of physical activities, wrestling or running and jogging, that is not what is, I mean, that is some rajasic activity to warm up. If you are using it for doing meditation or keeping yourself fit in order to do certain acts of sacrifice, that is some positive paraphernalia which you can associate with your karma yoga. And that then becomes relevant. By itself, it's not karma yoga. Washing clothes by nature is not good or bad from karma yoga perspective, but you are wearing it to create certain vibration. You're doing your job, you want to create that positive vibration, it contributes there. Once you have that kind of a positive understanding, it becomes part of your karma yoga. So a lot depends on what sort of consciousness you are infusing into the physical activity in which you are engaging yourself. And that's very interesting. So he sort of continues and then he brings a bit of theological description to explain this cosmos of activities. Okay, so he's saying that how Prajapati or Brahma is a Sahajagyaha and how people were asked to do these karma kandas and these sacrifices. And so the devatas, the sacrifices of the gods and the angels, and how they'll bless you, and how that's kind of is mutually beneficial and reinforcing in nature. Istan bhogan hivo deva dasyante yajna bhavitaha nedatana pradadebhyo yo bhukte stena eva saha. So there's a new word being introduced into this discourse called shet. That if you do it without any sacrifice, if you consume everything as an acquisitive animal in a market society, in a capitalist society, without thinking about other people, the society, the divinities, that is an act of theft in this cosmological understanding of work. It's work is being put in this whole cosmology of the imagined reality, where what is material is also divine, what is spiritual, also spiritual. So, yajna sista sina santo muchanti sarvakalvise bunjati tu agham papa ye pachantyatma karanat. The person who is trying to do anything, trying to achieve anything, purely for mental satisfaction of his own, or for his bodily, biological, social, whatever, his individual satisfaction, that's not going to give him any freedom or purity of consciousness, because he's not participating in this whole karmic cycle through certain acts of sacrifice. And then you might ask, what is this cosmos of karma, and what is the sacrifice I have to do, and why? Then he says, look, this whole universe in which you are living is one characterized by interdependence. So you cannot on your own decide to just consume and be happy, and you can be happy in a sustainable manner. That's not possible, because there is a world of interdependence. You have to contribute, then you will get a little share, and that's going to be sustainable. Here, we are talking about a social, spiritual ecology of human participation in this whole universe, where our physical activity cannot be meaningful in isolation from the universe of which we are a part and to which we must contribute. So one can actually stretch it a little to see there is an ecological imagination to this, right? So, like giving water to the plants, feeding the animals, protecting the rivers, respecting the mountains, or not destroying, because that will all be accept. If that is purely for your selfish interest, that is all theft. That's evil. That's not a very spiritual activity to engage in. That's what all of us do. And then we have this nature backlash, including what we are passing through right now. So he mentions that famous sentence, Arnat bhavanti bhutani parjanyat parjanyat anna sambhavah yajnat bhavati parjanyo yajna karma samudbhavah. So it's a big cycle. So first is karma. Out of karma, what happens? You're doing yajna, sacrifice. You sacrifice your karma for a higher purpose. And then this yajna, this sacrifice, creates the rain. Rain, of course, they're doing these physical yajnas and it causes rain, as per the ritual understanding of it. But just look at it metaphorically. Our action, if you do it as a sacrifice, as a contribution, if you see the word sacrifice as a contribution, then parjanya is phalalabha. The rain is actually phala. And when you have those phala, the rain, and then out of that, what happens? You have rain, and then out of that, you have arna, then you have rice. And then out of rice, what? All the animals and the birds, all the flora and fauna, they survive, right? So annat bhavati bhutani parjanyat anna samava yajnat bhavati parjanyu yajna karma samudbhava karma brahmod bhavam vidhi brahma kara samudbhavam tasma sarvagatam brahma nityam yajna pratishthitam. This is the karmic universe is mentioning. So is this Brahma, he wrote about this Vedic rituals which the human beings are committing or performing. Where this Brahma came from? He came from Brahman, name and formless, that absolute. So this Brahma comes. Akshara, he's come from Akshara. And therefore he's saying, because he gave the Vedas, and following the Vedas, the human beings do karma, and karma has phala for the society in the form of rain, out of which you have crops, and crops sustain life. So, and then this life again produces a condition, the ability to karma. So, where does it all start from? From the Brahman, the absolute. And there's a big cycle. Therefore, is it possible for me to say that this Nitya Yajna, the continuous, sustainable practice of sacrifice, is the one in which you have to see the Brahman, the Absolute, is establishing its manifestation. Without it, it cannot sustain itself. Okay? And therefore, he's saying, And the person who sort of slips out of this cycle in an unceremonious, hider, sulking manner, doesn't want to make his contribution, lives in the village, eats in the common kitchen, would not like to contribute. What happens? What kind of a person he is? He's saying, Aghayu Indriya Rama, the one who relishes in his senses, his life is meaningless. Swami Vivekananda had said, only that person lives who lives for others. And he also mentioned again that I am the worshipper of that God whom the foolish call humans. A beautiful sentence. It comes straight out of this particular thing, that our life is in fact an act of sacrifice and for ascension to a higher level of consciousness. And then he says, he hardly leaves. Mogham partha sajivati. Yasu atmarati eva syad amrit atmatriptasya manavah atmaneva sasantustas tasya karyam na vidyate. Then he gives a concession, and there is again, he is not talking about karma in isolation of jnana, because we know that this karma is in fact a certain stage to ascend to a higher level. And therefore, he says, this karma you don't have to do for all time to come. You know why? Because when you purify your activities, you're going to reach that level where you can establish yourself purely in self-knowledge and meditate on the self. And at that moment of time, you don't have to again run around, perform activities because you want to do that yajna, sacrifice. And therefore, he sort of, and he's explaining in the next sloka because he has no interest in whatever is in this whole creative process because he has withdrawn to the self. Next sloka. Then he's giving a rationale for niskama karma and establishes certain techniques that we got to follow. Tasmad asakta satatam karyam karma samachara asakto Yachara charan karma paramapnoti purushaha. Now look, it's a beautiful, rewarding sentence for karma yogins, where Bhagavan says, therefore the one who is able to do his karya, and you do samyak prakarana achara, please do that karma. And do how? You might have that doubt, right? And he's saying, I'll tell you how. Then first you be asakta. Don't get connected with the results of your work. Don't self-obsess yourself regarding the rewards you're going to reap out of whatever you are doing. That's going to be self-defeating. And you do it. That's going to be, you can get param. You can get that moksha, the ultimate goal of life. Purusha. Karmaneva hi sansiddhas astita janakarya lokasangraham evapi sampasyan kartumarahasi. And then he brings in this whole new dialogue on a mega rational and a justification for karma for those people who are fairly advanced in indirect study of the spiritual literature, who may have wealth, who may not need to do any work, who have enough money to sit and relax like Warren Buffett. And then he says, come on, you should not sit and relax because there are certain problems in that. And you might ask how, and he's explaining it by saying that you have to do it for Loka Sangraha in order to set an example for other people so that they don't get dissuaded from doing their duty because it's necessary for them. Okay? And then he explains that in the sloka 21 that whatever a leader, whatever a remarkable individual does, everybody else follows him as pramana, as a proof of right code of conduct. So yat pramanam kurute lokas tat anuvartate. The people follow him. And therefore you got to know that if you're the father, if you don't get up in time, you don't behave properly, how you are expecting the children to behave? They're not going to do that. So you have to start setting the example yourself. So therefore he says, do you know, Partha, I'm Lord myself, Lord of the universe, I've taken a human body, I don't have anything to do, but still continuously I do work. Not because I have any desire, because I have no craving, no desire, nothing. But I do it. Why? If I don't do it, he explains it, sloka 23rd. There is a warning that if you destroy this cycle of karmic sacrifice which sustains this universe, this whole world universe of interdependence is going to fall apart. Then he says, Yadi hyaham navarteyam yatu karman natindritaha mama batmanuvartanti manushyaha partha sarvashaha. Everyone follows me, and if I don't do it, there's going to be a huge problem in this whole, then he mentions how I'll be responsible for the destruction of the social order because nobody will do any work. Then, whenever in this particular kind of moral discourse, we are talking about what is right, you have to constantly mention what is wrong in order to alert people not to do those things. Whenever anyone explains what to do, he immediately mentions what not to do. So Bhagavan mentions here that there are also people who do karma, but they are not karma yogis. According to this particular discourse, he says, Saktaha karma navidvangso abidvangsho yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvangs tatha saktas chikeshur loka sangraham. So he mentions two kinds of people. One kind of people are the stupid, ignorant people. And you might have this question. All people ask this question. If I do niskama karma, will I have a passion, any commitment to do it seriously? Bhagavan says yes. You have to do what you are doing, this niskama karma, with equal amount of passion and commitment as a person who is stupid and is engaged in making money for himself, his wife, and children. Is doing it how? How a materialistic sansari person lives his life with full of passion. He wants to achieve a lot of things. He works from morning to night with total dedication. Now, if you're a nishkama karmi, there is going to be only change in direction. There is no change in speed and intensity. So you will work equally hard and you will be as committed. The only difference is your brain is different. You're thinking differently. Outwardly, both of you are dressing up same in the office. You may have exactly similar responsibilities, and you shall both do equally well, or whatever. You shall not belie the expectation of the company or the organization where you're working, but there shall be a difference. You shall be going home and washing and meditating for a while, doing breathing exercises and reading Gita. Your world and universe is completely different, but you are living it with total passion. Detachment doesn't mean lack of involvement or lack of commitment. So the sloka number 25 is very, very important. Okay? And then he alerts him, Arjuna, because you are a little smart, because you have read the Shastras, don't talk about this jnana and karma and other things to the common people because they don't understand this. And if you say jnana is superior and all, what are they going to do? They'll stop doing their job. Who's going to lose? The society is going to lose. Their families are going to lose. So please don't mislead. There is an alert for all students of Vedanta never to confuse their family members, their sons, wives, children, that I'm studying in Vedanta, you don't do puja, you just have to meditate, read Vedanta, everything you will get. No, please don't do it. Bhagavan mentions it here. Na buddhi vedam janayet. Okay, he mentions this. Ajnanam karma sangina. They are supposed to do their work. They are involved in their work. Love it. Let them do it. There shall be a time where they will understand this work is not an end in itself, that it's a means to self purification. Once they understand this, they'll do much better. But don't spoil what they're doing right now. As they say, if you flog a running horse, it can only stop. So don't disturb them. Let them do it in course of time. So therefore, let them do it, and in course of time, you do your job. Okay, and then he sort of mentions again what are the differences I was saying a while back between the person who is doing work with self-enlightenment, has got a bit of exposure to Vedanta, and the one who doesn't have an exposure to Vedanta. We have to explain the difference, and Bhagavan does that in verse number 27 and 28. Prakriti kriyamani guni karmani sarvasa ahankar vimulatma kartahamiti manyate. What is he saying is, this is a purely Vedantic statement. Because you do it because you think you are karta. But is that the perfect understanding? Is there anyone called karta? This is a false identification of the Atma with the body, with the physical mind we have, the body mind complex. And we think this guy is doing, but actually what? There's a connection of the Indriyas with the Vishayas, and the Gunas are active. You are just like a gateway through which different karmic forces are moving and things are happening. You are a mute witness. If you can understand this, then you are going to the next level. But the one who gets trapped in it, it's like you're invited as a guest or as a mediator because you are the wisest guy, a senior guy. There's a family call. So there are two kinds of mediators. One kind of mediators who are very saintly people go and sit and listen to both the parties without any emotional involvement. They listen to both the parties and say, look here, I see these two possibilities. Do you want to do it? You take your time, decide amongst yourselves, have a negotiation. I don't see it going further. The decision has to be taken by both of you. He stops there. And if you don't take an early decision, this is your loss. That's all he says. But then, if you get a little involved, you can take a certain side, you can be part of the quarrel. And instead of being a part of the solution, you can actually, further maximize, further expand the problem, exacerbate the problem. Therefore, anyone who thinks he's a karta is actually Bimbhudatma, somebody who doesn't understand who he is because he's blinded by his ahankara. I am this is mine. Then he compares immediately that with a person who knows what is tattva, what he is. I'm just a reflection of the Brahman, trapped in this samsara. I shall do my duty, but I shall not be a prisoner. It's like, you do a lot of things, but you don't. It's like a baby is running on the street. You want to save the baby, but you don't want to have the baby. You return the baby to its mother. That's how it is. So tattva mahavaha guna karma vibhagayo guna gunasu vartanta iti matva na sajjate. They don't get trapped because they know that there are different senses and they are connecting with their own objects or vishayas, and they are guided by these three forces at work, the sattva, tamas, and rajas. And they sort of are allowing everything to happen through them, but they're quiet and they're thoughtful and they are witness-like. Okay, and then it sort of moves. So then he says, okay, so how can I be dissociated from everything? The karma yogi will ask this question. Sir, you're saying that I'll be a witness, but where is my anchor? Because I'm sort of caught up in a whirlpool of life. How do I hold myself? Bhagavan says, don't worry, I got a key for you. And what is that? He's saying, look, Mai Sarvani Karmani Sanyasya Adhyatma Chetasa Nirasi Nirmamo Bhutva Yuddhasva Vigata Jwaraha. Okay, get rid of all your fears, anxieties, tensions, and apprehensions. Can you do one thing? You be Matpara. Establish, surrender all your karmas to me, the results to me. I'll take care of you, and then you fight the war. And don't bring it back to Mahabharata, but the war of life, the contestation which is going on in all of us. Okay? And Nirasi, don't have any craving or desire. And Nirmamo, don't have, this is mine, I want to do it because I want accolades, I want recognition. Then this is a karma bumper, you're going to suffer, you'll feel very ditched. Okay? So there's a lot of problem. If you want to help someone, and you help in anticipation of some appreciation. You help somebody was in problem getting married or something, and so you get some money or arrange a party, or and then that fellow got married and went off and forgot to invite you for the lunch. You are feeling very bad. This guy didn't call me. How cruel! How stupid! How stupid am I? Why did I help him? These kind of stupid moments that we waste in life is because of our own stupidity, nothing to do with that guy, because you invested emotions, you trapped yourself. Ahankara vimodatma kartahamiti manyate, you have become that. So what can that guy do? Okay, so we have karma bandha, but you shall not have karma bandha. Bhagavan says how you try having adhatma chetas, you try to surrender to me. And then he's saying, and then he mentions how even this karma can give you that jnana. Yeme matam idam nityam anutishtanti manava shraddhavanto anusunyanto muchyante tepi karma viti. So they also shall be liberated, shall be set free from all these karmas, provided they surrender to me and they have respect for the Vedanta Vakyas I'm speaking here. And we have had long discussion on this. And then uh, you can have a question, Bhagavan, is such a nice, sweet story you're telling as to how one can do karma. He doesn't have to do it for donkey years because you're going to liberate him. You're going to take him to a higher level where he can sit and meditate on the self. Aren't you saying that? Bhagavan says, of course I'm saying that. Then the question comes from the student. Bhagavan, please tell me why everybody isn't doing that. If it's so easy, Bhagavan has to give an answer. And he has an answer. And he's saying, do you know what? Prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Even if they try to control their mind or whatever, many of the people on earth are not sufficiently endowed with certain purva punya, good actions of the past, which enables them to dissociate from what they're doing. They shall be victims of their own nature. Like insects sacrifice themselves in fire. They get attracted to the luminous flame. What happens to them? They get burnt. Does that stop them from getting burnt? No. They'll play for a while and get burnt. Like all of us, with our attention to the material ends in life, we lose all our energy. We're almost like insects, sacrificing ourselves in the flame in front of us, the flame of the samsara. And then once he mentions this, then he alerts him. You don't be like that. You are a little more endowed, and therefore, what should you do? He says, you please understand there are two risks involved when you're doing karma yoga. And there are two big enemies who are going to prevent you from doing what you are trying to do. And who are they? Raga and Dvesha. And they are kind of hiding. What is the adhisthana for them? All these idiots, they hide in your mana, buddhi, ahankara, and the senses, indriyas, and they trouble you. So you have to all the time stay away from them. Then he mentions that famous sentence, Sreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharma Swanisthita Swadharmi Nidhanam Sreya Paradharmo Bhayabha. You might ask this question, a more technical question. Okay, I'll do karma yoga, but what am I supposed to do? Bhagavan doesn't involve himself there. He says, ask yourself, what are you good at? That is your swadharma. You want to start somewhere. Now, if a guy who's jobless comes to you and you are a bank, you're going to give a small loan for him to start some entrepreneurial activities. In the moment he comes to you, because the government has a scheme, he says, okay, so what is the scheme available? A small scale investment, you can take up to 200,000 rupees. Okay, give me the money. What did you do? I don't know, you tell me. What would the government do? Because this guy has to come with a proposal. He said, no, I don't know any proposals. You just write it for me and give me the money. But Bhagavan doesn't do it. Bhagavan says, you figure out what is going to be your proposal. Then he clarifies, don't try to take unwanted risk of jumping into an unknown territory. Start with what's your area of strength, and that's your swadharma. Even if you do it imperfectly, that is much better than trying to do something which is not your own, which is not your own domain. Like suddenly you decide that I'm going to be a singer, or I'm going to be a dancer, because you see somebody dancing very well, or somebody is a great, player of piano. You just heard a number, you said, "Can't I do that?" May not happen. You got to figure out what you are endowed with, what do you love, what's your natural inclination. Then you do that, and in so doing, you practice niskama karma. So Bhagavan doesn't give you any technical answers regarding what exactly to do. He's giving you the opportunity to think about what is best done by you by this sloka. Swadharme niyata sreya paradharma bhaya. Then Arjuna asks the next question. Bhagavan, you're saying that a lot of people prakritim janti bhutani and they fail, and you're mentioning about raga dvesha. Please mention why people, even if you have such nice ideas about what's good and why they should do it, papam charati purusha, why should they go in the wrong path? Anichan abhivasne valadivan yojita, as if he's pulled away despite his all righteousness. He doesn't want to do all these wrong things. Why does he start gambling and do wrong things and commit all kinds of sinful activities? Bhagavan is there to address. He says, do you know why? Because you have to understand your prakriti. There's something called sattva, tama, rajas, and out of rajas, there's a powerful bunch of forces called kama and krodha. You have raga and you have desire, you want to get it. If you don't get it, then you feel angry. That is when your desires are not fulfilled. What you experience is anger. Mahasano mahapapma vidhyenam iha vairinam. Please understand, recognize this. These are like pickpockets. Recognize them. They're going to come and snatch you. They're like bootleggers. Be careful, they're muggers. Okay? That's what Bhagavan mentioned to you. Then he mentions why people fail to recognize the truth in life, why they fail to do karma yoga. And he's giving three examples who talks about three levels of ignorance. The least intense is what? Bhumina abriyate vanhi, like fire is covered with smoke. But if there's a bit of wind, the smoke goes. You can see the fire. Okay, or the fire becomes a little more luminous, full of flames, you can see the fire. And despite the smoke, you can see the fire. The next example is giving Yatha darso malenacha, like a mirror is kind of covered by a layer of dust. Then you can remove the dust off. You just wipe it and it gets clean. That's the second level. What is the third level? Like the baby is kind of covered by the womb. That is a complete blinding of the consciousness. So that is the third level of ignorance. Okay? Tena idam apritam das jnanam. Abritam jnanam ekena jnanino nitya vairina kama rupena kauntena duspurena nalena cha. This particular desire or craving, which is never fulfilled, is that karma which is blinding you, disabling you from participating in the karma yoga, which is an act of sacrifice. And then he says that the adhisthana, the foundation on which this particular game goes on, is Indriyani mana buddhis. Buddhir asya adhisthana muchyate. So this is the place. What is the carrier of this virus? These are the carriers of the virus. Okay? So they kind of blind you, and be careful about it. Tasmatum indriyanadau niyamya bharata savapapmanam prajahihiyanam jnana vijnana nasanam. They are the ones who destroy your consciousness. Okay? Having said that, in the last two sentences, he mentions why you need to sort of focus on the Atma. Because he says you have to see the subtler, the more powerful, the better, closer to truth. So Indriyani paranyahu indriyabhya param manaha. You have the senses, you have vishayas. The senses are subtler, more powerful. Compared to these jnana indriyas, what is even subtler and more powerful? The mind. Compared to the mind, what's more powerful? Manasastu para buddhir. Yo buddhe para tastu saha. That is the Atma. Even what is superior, what is subtler than the buddhi, that is the Atma. Evam buddhe param drishtva. So beyond the buddhi or intellect, what is beyond that? The self. You see that. Okay? And sanstabhyatmana, sanstabhyatmanam atmana, yahi satra mahavaho kamarupam durasadam. So, how to do it? You see, the anchors we are mentioning about is, in the initial stages, the Lord, the bhakti that you are doing, that is the handle with which we have to do our karma yoga sadhana. Then when we graduate further, it is the awareness of ourself and that Brahma Tattva, that Atma Tattva. That is what is going to strengthen our resolve, give us all the support, and enable us on our path of Karma Yoga. And in the next chapter, the transition from Karma and Jnana, that we will do tomorrow. So I'll stop here. If you have any questions, we'll take that up in the Google Meet.